We are recording.
We are recording and welcome. I'm glad that you are here with us. At this part of the program, we're usually in the mood to say something like and subscribe. So please don't like us. Please don't. I dare you. Don't like us.
Don't like us. Do not subscribe.
Don't hit any bells. Don't click. Don't ask for more content. Just show up when you show up. And if you don't show up, okay, we won't know the difference. But
We won't know the difference. We're just having a good time here.
So hello and welcome. We're joking around, but not joking around because, you know, if you're not laughing, you're crying, you know?
Well, that's a great segue to our topic today.
What's our topic?
These guys come with no topic. I bring a topic in, and then they change the topic eventually. So, but I'm going to start with this topic. Well, I'm going to start with this. So, I have a book out that's called Playing You, and it's about using acting techniques in your own life. And my background is in acting. And one of the things that I really learned about acting was that there was an element very much missing sometimes in my acting. And I learned it from Michael Shirtliff, who was a New York really well-known casting agent. And I took some workshops with him, and he said, whenever anyone comes to audition, I always look for this one thing in their performance. And he said, you have no idea how many actors never do this one thing. He's like, if they don't do this one thing, I don't cast them. So the one thing is humor. If they find humor in the scene, even if it's a tragedy, even if it's like some kind of like really sad scene, to find some humor in it. And one of the things I notice when I watch a movie, like within the first 3 minutes, I can tell whether the movie's going to be good or not. But if I watch the movie, there's always two things that I look for. It's like, where's the humor and where's the love? And we'll talk about love when we get to Valentine's Day. But the humor in our lives, we take life very seriously. And so I wanted to talk about bringing humor and how Taoists bring humor. And I want to start with a quote with Terence McKenna. So this is kind of your prompt, very, very short quote. He says, the truth, for sure, when it arrives, will make you smile. If it doesn't, you should seek a deeper truth.
Wow, that's deep.
Oh. Wow, I feel like if I want to deliver my line, I should start over here and then just move over and deliver it as I'm going. But if I mess up, no,
I feel like you should smoke a pipe while you're doing that move.
Wouldn't it be amazing though if I had a pipe? Like, when do men stop smoking pipes?
I love a pipe.
I know. What
I
happened?
actually have a pipe. I used to love smoking it.
I've never smoked anything, but I see these guys with vape pens and I'm like, it just doesn't do it.
No.
Like, if an old man has got one of those old pipes and he's packing it and it's better than incense, and he just sits there, it's like the world could be on fire. You're like, apparently everything's fine. This guy's smoking a pipe.
It's
like,
the funnest thing to like, you enjoy it. It's a process. It's a ritual, right? You're packing it, you're keeping it lit, but the aroma from it is just spectacular. The reason that I actually stopped smoking is that I noticed it turned my teeth yellow. And that was a kind of an unnecessary side effect I felt.
Sure. to be honest with you, I'd put that shit in a potpourri thing and just burn it. I wouldn't smoke it. I just want to smell it. It really makes you feel like, hey, everything in the world's okay. Like the old guys, the world was burning down, World War I, II. Everybody's like, it's fine, because there were pipes.
Okay, so take two. I was just talking about humor, okay? And your guys are talking about pipes. So I'm going to actually ask you questions, all right? So Arthur has this amazing book out that I've read and love and actually interviewed him with. And in his book, he talks about the way in which he went through a pretty difficult time and he had to use humor to get through it. So we'll start with you, Arthur, and then I have some questions for you, Mr. Lao.
Okay.
So Arthur.
Wait, what was the question again?
The question is, so people, this is about the time you will be turning us off.
Subscribe. There's
Please
one.
don't subscribe to either of these two.
Well,
so
right there, right? We had a beautiful, nice giggle and everything. Doesn't that make life better?
yeah.
Right? I mean, it's either that you're going to enjoy life, you're going to giggle, you're going to collect those giggles, right? Because the best sound in the world for me, honestly, hands down, is my daughter giggling. I mean, that's like literally what I want to hear every day. I mean, and that makes my day better, and it makes me want to smile. It makes me want to. But when you smile, have you noticed that when you smile and you laugh, when you do it for real, not like pretending, like when you meet somebody. Like, oh. No, but when you do it for real, you're smiling all the way down to your pelvis. Your whole system is actually engaged in this process. You're not cutting anything out. The whole system's going, yeah, right?
Well, actually, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask is like, from a Taoist perspective or even a Chinese medicine perspective, what happens when you laugh or when you smile, and what happens when you cry and frown or, go into self-pity? There are things that happen in the organs, yes?
Yes, the organs cry the tears, the eyes refuse to cry. And so what happens is, okay, first off, tears aren't tears. They're not all the same. If you're laughing till you're crying, the tears that come out are a different chemical composition than the tears that you cry for grief. Fact. It's just a different composition.
Wow, did not know that.
And most people don't. Physiology eludes even some of the most adroit medical students. They want to know how things work so they can medicate it, but they don't want to know how things work so they can do reverse engineering. But the tears are totally different. And
okay, well, I have one quick question to ask about that, because I did not know that was true. So when you're meditating sometime, or you're doing qigong sometime, at least my eyes will tear up. There's, and that's sort of, I understood as sort of a cleansing. Is that a different type of a tear?
Yep, that's a different type of a tear too. But you'll know, and this is a very interesting sort of phenomenon that most people are unaware of too. When you're being extremely emotive in terms of like deep spiritual connection with something, you'll start crying out a wholly other type of tear as well. Because in Chinese medicine, the liver is where the hun, the highest or etheric self, it's still you, not sen, it's not the not you, it's hun, and it controls the eyes. So when you're having this sort of intimate, where you're not just talking cerebrally, you're not just talking logically, you're talking from your soul. And it's why if you see when gospel singers, soulful gospel singers sing, they can make people cry.
Absolutely.
I knew a woman, this was a really beautiful story. I was actually having dinner last night with a couple of clients, and I was talking about this. This was in Kentucky. This was Southeast Kentucky, so kind of rural. She had 5 kids, and 4 of them had died due to violence. But they were grown-ups. They were adults. They survived into adulthood, but they died during violence, and only one. And she was this older woman, and she was so amazing. And when she sang that gospel, oh my God, there were conversions happening of people who do not even believe it, just because you could feel pain, but the angst, but then there was this sort of like deep and abiding faith that was getting her through everything, that it was all part of God's plan for her, right? But that sound came out and people were just crying, and she wasn't like the act. The choir was doing the singing. She just happened to be on the front row, but her voice was so, basso, so voceron, it's like, holy cow. And that type of emotive is beyond reason. It's beyond logic. It's even beyond emotive in a transpersonal way. This is an emotion that comes from a level of existence so few people ever get. But it's why sometimes if you're a really big art aficionado, certain pieces of art will move you to tears. But you don't know you're crying. Certain performances, and like, for example, I think most people have seen Les Miserables on stage. But I happened to see it one time in Toulon, France. And I don't know who was playing the the lead female role. I can't remember the character's name, but they were playing that role. And
Ebony.
yeah,
Yeah.
and she, she's down in her luck. I mean, she's, and of course she was singing the song, of course, the famous one, but there was just the roles that were all involved in it, and people were just moved to sobbing, not just wiping and dabbing their eyes, but sobbing, because you could tell that there's something in that actress's life that probably was getting released, getting catharsis, right? And so all of these emotions, they have places inside of us that are attached to things. Some people call them repressed memories. Some people call them past life memories. I mean, it really doesn't matter. It's kind of moot what the actual causality is, but it's very, very deep. And so when these things find expressions, like for example, have you ever seen somebody get angry and your anger is disproportional to what's happening? It's not because they're irascible necessarily. It's because there's a lot of repressed anger, and when you express a little, the rest of it's like, I'm coming too.
Right.
Well, that's the way with every single emotion. No one emotion is paramount. No one emotion is like, this one's good and this one's not good. That's crazy. Anger is just as viable and great as everything else. But one coping mechanism that the body has is crying. But ironically, laughter is identical to crying in terms of its
I notice that because like when I'm really like crying hard, it's like like you feel like all this pumping going on below, and also like when I'm laughing really hard, I start to cough, like I start to feel stuff coming from the lungs, coughing up phlegm, and I know lungs have to do with grief, right? In Chinese.
Yeah, and so the mechanism's the same, and it's just like people will tell you that anxiety or anxiousness, fear, and excitement are the same exact emotion. The difference is breath. Well, it's sort of the same way with crying and laughing. It's really the matter of breath, and how you approach it will be depending on how you approach the world. Laughter does something that crying doesn't do. Laughter makes this part of the brain involved so you can be balanced both yin and yang in terms of logic and reason, but also emotion and intuitiveness. Crying, just part of the brain typically doesn't get involved. And so it becomes mostly emotional. That's why when people cry, they feel like they're almost in a sea or a torrent. Whereas when they're laughing, they feel much more equanimable because the other part of the brain is engaged.
Does it affect the heart when you laugh, or what is it? What's that?
But laughing and crying, both. In fact, Chinese medicine now, and I mean this in terms of not traditional Chinese medicine post 1951 Mao. I'm talking about classical Chinese medicine. There's an actual technique for people with like PTSD or grief or shell shock or whatever. It's called dry crying. And so if you look at the Tai Chi Pole, which runs from Baihui all the way down to Huiyin at the perineum, right? Like some people call it the Tai Chi Pole, some people call it the Chong Mai or Chong channel, thrusting channel. And so you would lean over a bed like this, and you want to just, and so and it's like if you take like that pole, think of it like the heart's right in the center of it, right? But it's all caked in mud. It's like banging it until the mud comes off of it. And it's very powerful. Best to do it over a bed though, when you're leaning backwards doing it, because if you fall and hit your head or something, at least on your bed, but it's really powerful stuff. And typically, if you go far enough into one, it'll become the other.
Yeah, that's really true. We have in Kundalini yoga, we have a particular shavasana. It's called, sort of laughing shavasana. You lie on your back and everyone just laughs, and you laugh and laugh and laugh for like 5 minutes. You just laugh. And it's amazing how eventually sometimes people just start crying because they're laughing so hard. And they listen to somebody else laugh, and it just, there's a wave that goes through.
Infectious. Yeah, absolutely. But same thing, crying will generally be the same way. Crying will generally.
Well, that's just it. Yeah, that's it.
So,
you're going to say something?
Lao, I have a question along those lines.
Yeah.
So I noticed myself over, many years, there were several instances where tears started coming out after a particularly strong orgasm. What is that all about?
Well, typically, okay, if you look at it in terms of like bedchamber type theory, right? So I'm going to a particular part of Taoism, not really, authorized, not really considered okay in proper China today. So don't be going around looking the Chinese countryside for this stuff. They don't allow it there. But the texts are still the text. When you are properly involved in a sexual experience, and I don't mean a Friday night on Mad Dog 2020 or something like that. I mean, like, you are there, the person is there, and you both want to be there, you both want to connect, you're both vulnerable, you're both emotive as well as receptive, the yin and yang are going back and forth. Then what happens is the liver, it does involve the eyes, but it also governs the genitals. And so when you completely open to the experience, there are ways to know whether or not you're completely open to the experience. But what will happen is generally for a male, the erection will be stronger than it's ever been in their life. The blood flow, due to the heart being involved, because the liver is the wood and the heart is fire. So the wood is feeding the fire, but simultaneously, tears can be streaming down your face with no real joy or sadness attached to it. It's just this constant flow. And you can find it in almost similar things when people are doing confession. It's interesting, but they'll have that thing, but they're not necessarily grieving. They don't know why they do it. And then at the same time, when it fully expands, when it fully explodes or whatever, it can be this whole body sensation where part of you feels like you're going to, you can't breathe, you're beyond crying, beyond laughing, and it's this whole body thing. Very few people ever will experience that in their life, because the amount of trust it takes between you and the other person, and the ability to be completely vulnerable and honest with yourself, most people just never get there in their life. That's what that means.
I also think I think that women cry a lot after an orgasm, and I think that if you're
But
talking
that's usually
about,
because of the partners they chose.
no, I just think it's like when there's such a big release, like you're just releasing, but I also think I have to say that I have had partners who actually laugh during orgasm when they're done, and it's pretty hilarious. It's pretty funny, and I think that there's a part that there's just a release of whatever has been there, and that's partly, I think, what an orgasm can do in terms of the healing aspect of it, is to release something that you didn't even maybe know was there.
Yeah, so there's procreation, there's recreation, there's restoration, and there's transformation, right? And so restoration would be healing old emotional wounds. The problem with it is it's a byproduct, and it's a wonderful byproduct, but it's not what it's meant for. And so if it happens incidental, great. If you're trying to use it to accomplish that, yeah, it's the side effect. There's other side effects that you got to worry about. It's not what it's meant for, because when people use sex as a stress reliever, which it can be used in, at times if it's absolutely there, but the problem with it is then you start equating it. You start Pavlovian concept, that every time you get stressed out,
It can become addictive.
right? And that's what it does, because it's just like alcohol becomes addictive, because
You're using it to relieve.
this is the salve, and it's like, that's not what that's for. I mean, you can use it, don't get me wrong, but if you want to program it that's all it becomes for, then you start being able to be like, you're not stressed, you have no sexual urges. So it's like there's always yin and yang to everything. It's not this, it's not that, it's those, and so it's very careful. But the humor is a way to deal with the stress. And you can have playful humorous sex. Most people don't know what that means, but you can have humorous, playful anything. But I will tell you,
Inuits call sexual intercourse laughing together. Is it the Inuits? I thought it was the Inuits.
it might be
their term for for making love.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's Inuit. I might be right. It might be Hawaiian or something, but yeah.
But
Usually it's the woman laughing at me.
it may happen.
I've met Adele, and I that might be true.
So, but Lao, you and I, when we talked in Arorah, when we talked about the concept of this podcast, we often the word that you like to use a lot, and the word that I obviously resonate with is perspective, right? So when you go through life and you think life is amazing and you embrace it, and you find humor in situations, that's one perspective. On the other hand, you can be like Eeyore and be complaining all the time and everything sucks and everything's bad. And that's another perspective. Which one will get you through life better, right?
You know, the utility of humor, though, is either one, whether you go through life like Pooh or Eeyore or Tigger or Rabbit. Because, for example, you look at a lot of veterans, and veterans, you know, they're kind of jaded in a lot of ways. You see some shit, but the gallows humor,
Right.
and now I tell you, it's not for everyone. I'm guilty of thinking it's hilarious, but I've also seen it a lot, been through a lot, and I get it. Most people find it very offensive, and the reason why they do it is because there's no context in which that's funny.
Yeah.
But gallows humor is extraordinarily useful, no different than now. And most people think humor has to do with being silly. It can, but humor is just a way of looking at the world, and it's a muscle, like anything else. It's a muscle, and you will always be able to get through the heavy weight of life if your muscle of humor is properly developed. And if you learn that your greatest weight, the biggest dumbbell to that muscle is you. Because if you know how to laugh at you, you will never run out of shit to laugh.
Yeah, that's really true. I wanted to ask you, Lao, you told me a story once about how laughter got you out of a very, very interesting situation. I mean, there's probably a lot of them, but I'm thinking of a time that you were captured. Oh, actually, no. That's the one where you went down in the that weird place. But there's a couple of stories where actually laughter was the thing that saved your life. Do you want to talk about
something? That happens a lot. So I was in a.
You know which ones I'm talking about?
Specifically talking about the one where I was tied naked, zip tied to a pole in a box truck, singing.
Oh no, that's not the one. Maybe you heard that one. I'm talking about the one where you weren't supposed to go to this cave, and then you were in it. It felt like you were there for eternity, and then you were trying to figure out how to get out, and you started laughing.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one?
Yeah, Romania, just outside of Constanta. Well, not just outside, but from Constanta went west to the Carpathians. Yeah, and I was in a very nihilistic Nietzsche phase. I didn't have emo or black lipstick or black nail polish for you hot topic denizens, but I was in my own version of a very nihilistic. And basically the gypsies that lived there, although they don't like to be called gypsies, other gypsies nonetheless, they basically like, don't go there. And I was like, I've got to go. I don't care. I don't even care.
Now tell us about this cave. What was this cave?
The locals had a tradition that what lived in that cave was the epitome or the anthropomorphic manifestation of despair. And and I was in a particular part of my life, I'd lost some really good friends, very, very traumatically and tragically. My life was really in a very dark place. And so I had this, I don't care. What does it matter? And in most people who actually come to me over all the years, for either to be a student or to be a client or a patient or whatever, they would always come with this idea of, what does it matter? Okay. Like if Taoists say nothing matters, or Buddha said it's all illusion, so what does it care? Like, what do you care? And I know what they were feeling because I had felt that, and that's what led me to that cave. And she was just like, don't go there. You don't want to go there. Because for some reason, it's like the Golden Gate Bridge for some reason attracts all the people who want to commit suicide.
Right.
People literally will travel from all the world to jump over the Golden Gate Bridge. I got no clue. I'm from California. I'm from San Francisco, and I will tell you, I have seen in traffic, sitting on the bridge, looked over, and there's a dude and his dog just walking along the little thing. I was just like, threw the fucking dog and jumped over too. I was like, what the, like,
Why throw the dog?
right? But that was my biggest thing. I was like, why would you throw the dog, bro?
Because you don't want to die alone.
At
You don't.
that point, the dog's like, I'm just like, whoa. And and it's crazy. In fact, I think they're talking about putting this $100 million or $200 million net under it, which will catch birds and then they'll take the damn thing down. But it's California. But people do that. And so for this cave, for some reason, and you get as woo as you want to get. I'm not gonna make any claims to why people choose this place, but people come. And this cave sort of represents that. It's the Carpathians are very foreboding, anyways. I mean, I think people of European descent have something with that in their DNA or something, because when you see them, you just go. I mean, it's Transylvania too, so you've got the whole Bram Stoker thing. But even then, when you see it, you're like, this doesn't like the Ural Mountains or the Caucasus Mountains or the Alps. They're beautiful, but the Carpathians just look fucking foreboding. I don't know why. And I had been in Constanta and I had heard about this place or whatever, and something it was like pulling me from within, like compelling me, come here. And so the lady was just like, you really don't go there. I mean, we have this whole illusion of being really dark people. We're not. We're trying to keep people from going in there because most people don't come out. And so I'm going to be metaphorical here. Don't be like, oh, they're really monsters. And stop it. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes people come to me like, Lao, do you know any of the like Taoist exorcism things and all? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, that it does. There is a field of study for that. Not really in China, more in Taiwan. But I mean, out of 100 cases, maybe half of one will be an actual exorcism.
Right,
The other,
that's true.
but if sometimes people are like, no, you don't understand now. I saw a demon. It's like, sweet Pete, if you saw a demon, why are you still talking to me? When you're somehow fucking magically, I mean, if it's a demon, like you don't exist. Like demon, done, you're gone. Like that's demon, right? You're like, no, I got away. Oh, so you found the most inept fucking demon of all time. How amazing. Because I'm pretty sure bona fide demon, you don't come and tell some random fucking Taoist, yeah, I found a demon. Yeah. St. George would probably even, so, but there's a point where for you in effect, it's just same, where it's like you go to this place of like complete darkness. And so going in that place, I just had this like surrender, like I don't care. And not only did I not care, I didn't even care that I didn't care. There was no feeling of malaise, or it was just like fuck everything.
So it was just this defiance of
yes, everything,
like
everything. It was like daring
right.
to dare, And so when I went in, everything blacked out. Like I don't know, I can't tell you why.
Was it dark? Was it like completely black or
no light? Like there was less light than there was dark. I mean, it's like it's both like you would experience almost feel like you'd experiencing death, because there's just nothing. You don't hear anything, you don't smell anything, you don't see anything. There's just nothing. And then there's no time, right? There's no time in that type of environment, and you're there, and it feels like 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years. It just keeps going, lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. And then eventually, I mean, of course, the despair actually in the fear first, and then the fear lets the despair in. And then you're just having this whole absolute feeling of like, this is all there is. And for some reason, at one moment, and I don't know, it could have been 5 minutes, could have been 500,000 years. I don't know. Don't care. It's a moot point. But I just started laughing. And my first question is, what the fuck am I laughing at? And the second thought was, because I fucking can and you can't do anything about it. And I'm a bit of a defiant asshole. So it's like, oh, your fucking jig is up. And then not long after, I saw a little ray of light. I just kept going. And I was just laughing for no reason. People would have seen me, they would have thought he's mad, he's off his hinges. But that laughter was my choice, right? So despair is generally you don't have a choice. You're in a dark cave,
Right.
you're being set upon. But laughter is the one thing that I don't care. Even if you're in hell, it doesn't matter. No one can take that from you. And if you're going to be in a place of that kind of despair, the greatest weapon is the defiance of being like, fuck you, I'm gonna laugh at you anyways. And so when you do that, when you go further, then it's really hard to get somebody who wants to laugh at you to stop. Like you can punch them and hit them and do all the cruel things, but if they're laughing at you, technically you're going to be more miserable than they are. Even though they're suffering, you're the one that they're pushing your buttons.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how that sort of works, is that it's this point where it's like,
So you got out of that situation though. You didn't die in the pit of despair.
that would have been if I had not. And I don't think I'm like, oh, Lao's this brilliant savant. No, I'm an idiot who just happened to laugh. But maybe an idiot who happened to laugh has a higher propensity to live a better quality of life than a serious person. Because there's an old Taoist saying, where much knowledge comes much grief.
Mhm.
Hence, the Tao is usually portrayed as a kind of a simpleton who raises his face to the sky.
Cool.
And there's something very, very powerful in that, because
Okay. Well, we do want to hear the story about you naked on a pole. I mean, goodness sakes, when you put that out there, it's like, okay.
I don't know if I want to have that visual, but all right.
You know what?
I think that there are people that would really like that visual.
We'll
Yeah.
save that for another day. We don't want to give too much away. A girl does have her secrets.
Where
So
were
it's
you? Where were
interesting.
you on this pole? Where was the circumstance?
Azerbaijan. Yeah.
And why were you naked on a pole?
I got kidnapped.
She's gonna make you tell the story. You
I
realize,
am.
right?
Whether you want me to or not, Arthur, I want to hear this story.
Oh, I don't care. You can do whatever you want. It's just Lao was resisting. I'm just curious how long the girl's gonna resist.
What do you mean? He was like he was so ready to tell it, and then I
No,
stopped
he
him.
wasn't. He was like, that's a story for another day.
Yeah, I mean, the stories themselves are difficult sometimes to translate, because people hear it and it's so far removed from things in their life. And it's like two things that make that story, or all of my stories, really difficult is, one, most people have no context for these type of things happening, although they happen all the time. Why they happen to me is because I'm dumb enough to not say no. In those parts of my life, I just never said no. I was like, okay. And okay generally tended to get me in places I was like, why do I keep ending up in these places? Because I don't say no. I needed those things for this particular journey around the sun. But at the same time, it also gets people the wrong idea that, oh, allows this or this. You would have your own response, and your response would be either brilliant or you die. I'm too dumb to get in my own way. So that's why I'm still alive. It's not brilliant. If it was brilliant,
So you're naked, tied up on a pole, and then what happens?
I got thrown in a box truck. 6 dudes. They all had Kalashnikovs, and they were just, I don't know why they took me, to be honest. I mean, I can think of a million reasons, foreign, national.
But why were you naked? Why did they strip you?
Well, generally what you'll find a lot of times is that they get you naked because then you have a less chance, you feel more vulnerable. So it's a psychological way you don't run. They think you're going to feel helpless and exposed, and you'll be less of a fight. It happens all the time. They want you to feel that, right? This is why, like, for example, the Spartans of ancient Greece, they used to practice fighting and wrestling and everything naked. So that way, if they could never be caught unaware. If they were bathing or something and they were ambushed, most people wouldn't want to fight naked. And they were just like, come on, type of thing. So it's a psychological a weapon, if you will, to make somebody feel vulnerable and all. And so it just zip tied me. And so the very first thing I thought when that happened, because of course your heart's been your adrenaline, you're scared, but the only way to stay out of that type of fear is to go, well, it's not the weirdest thing I've ever done. And you hear me say that a lot because that's generally my go-to. So when you're naked on a pole and you're like, I mean, it's really just the first pole I've ever been naked on. I mean, it's just, and if I've done it voluntarily, this is not that weird. Right? And again, most people are like, he didn't do that. Look, man, call me full of shit. Say I'm thinking anecdotal. Maybe it's whatever you need to do. I don't care. It really means nothing to me. Take the point. The story means nothing. It's just there to convey something. But yeah, so I was kind of scared. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But at the same time, I know that I can't give in to that fear, right? And I remember the old Kyle MacLachlan and Patrick Stewart movie Dune, right? Fears the little death, fears the mind killer. I wasn't thinking of it at the time, but I knew that concept, like, fuck, if I let this go, because if you're afraid, you won't see opportunities, you won't see chances to get away, you won't see anything. And so I was just like, so I thought, I have no idea what to do. And they were pretty much ignoring me. They weren't like doing anything at first. But then I thought, I'm gonna go into full-on panic mode if I don't do something. So the only thing I could think to do was, I'm Henry VIII, I am Henry VIII, I am. I've been married to the moon next door. And then I got second verse, same as the first. And they were just like looking at me like, this guy's fucking crazy. And I'm like, well, maybe if they think I'm crazy, they'll leave me alone. So one guy got pissed really quickly and he hit me and it hurt. At the same time, the pain and the fear also stayed at bay. So I was like, but then I thought to myself, wait, I'm tied up and I made him do something. Oh, he handed me a remote control. That's a terrible idea. So I sang louder. And these guys are like hitting me and they're screaming and they're talking. I don't know what they're saying, but they're just punching me and they're hitting me with and I'm just singing because you know why? Fuck them, feed them hot dogs. And I'm watching 6 monkeys in a box truck. I'm like, oh, you people, you don't even know. But while that was going on, I wasn't thinking about dying. I wasn't thinking about anything else. The pain was already there. So I wasn't afraid of receiving pain. I was already getting it. And by the end of it, and they didn't kill me right out. So obviously they don't want me dead. And so that's what happened. Although my eyes were damn swollen shut, my ribs were cracked, and they put me on a boat from there, sailed me across the Caspian to Uzbekistan. But yeah, it's a matter of it's humor. That's the idea. It's got humor.
So you said something wonderful in there, other than all those wonderful things. And I'm glad you survived. I mean,
Yes.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, I did.
I mean, it's a bonus to our lives that you survived. I mean, this would be a very difficult conversation otherwise.
Yeah.
So you said something wonderful in there, and it's very, very, very true. That when you're in a state of happiness, in a state of laughter, right? You're open and you can see opportunities. When you're in a state of fear, you're in a closed box and you can see absolutely nothing else except the inside of that box. Right? And that's the reason to try to be in that state, because then you have the opportunities that you can say yes to, that you can move to. I actually read a book a long time ago, and it kind of gave me a new perspective on things. It was written by a doctor, and it's called The Biology of Belief.
Oh yeah, Brian, not Brian. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. No, I can't remember who it is, but yeah, I read it.
It's not relevant who it is. I mean, it's a good book for the most part. It's whatever, but there's one particular thing that I really, really loved about it, and it got me to look at things in a different way. Is that you're the leader of the trillions of cells in your body. The mood that you set will propagate to all the cells.
Yeah, epigenetically correct. Yeah,
right?
That's Bruce Lipton. It was his book.
So if you allow yourself to be in a bad mood, in a state of anxiety, in a state of fear, you're telling this command is going to trillions and trillions of cells that are doing their best to freaking help you on this journey.
Yeah.
Or you can be in a state of openness, in a state of contentment, in a state of laughter, and then all the cells are laughing with you, and they're like, "Yeah, let's go, let's do something, right?
Yeah.
We'll get through this. It's fine."
Yeah, there's actually Taoist precedent for that. If you look at some of the incantations, like the big 8 incantations, one of them talks about Danju, the spirit of the tongue, and the spirit of the throat, and the spirit of the Hun, right? Every part of the body is given a sort of an animist, right? Animist looks like the spirits of everything. Well, they do that for everything in their body, the tonsils, the everything.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because Shen is the emperor, Po is the prime minister, Hun is the general, the minister of grains is Yi, and Zhi is the minister of health. And so these are the 5 ministers that rule all of this kingdom. And so if you look in the Tao Te Ching, oftentimes you'll hear them, people will comment and they'll say, yes, it talks a lot about how to rule a country. And it's like, that's not about actual like governance. It's you're the country, right?
See, most people don't get that. Most people don't get that. It all starts with you.
Yeah, it's you.
There's a Tom Petty song that I really like, a line in it, and he says, you want to change the world, but you can't even change yourself.
Yeah, exactly right. And actually, as a Taoist, you'll find very rarely were there ever any Taoist emperors. I mean, emperors that follow Taoist thought, but very few Taoists were ever emperors or kings or anything. They didn't want to be in charge because they're like, I can barely rule my own shit.
There you go.
I've got to gain control of my own country before I can, because how you control your own life in your own country is how you're going to control and rule outside. And most people are tyrannical with their own lives.
Well, I always like what you say, Arthur, and that is that, when you're trying to enlighten other people, you say you have no right to enlighten people, that it's already, making a statement that there's something wrong with them or the world or something like that. And I also like what, you write about in your book in terms of life in, not just so much that it's like war, but it's a strategy. And one of the things that humor can do, because you're always talking about conserving your energy, and humor is another way to really conserve your energy. And even though you don't talk about
fear, anxiety, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They'll burn through energy like there's no tomorrow. You won't have anything left. I mean, stay in that state long enough, you're gone. But if you laugh right now, if you smile, you feel more energetic.
Exactly.
Right? You open the channels and everything. But it's very true. I mean, what I talk, to your point, Lao, of ruling yourself, what I talk to executives and CEOs about is forget about the business books. First and foremost, this is a journey about you. And if you show up better every day, the team around you is going to rise to that and is going to start emulating you. So as a teacher or a CEO or anybody else, my goal is not to teach. My goal is to live my life the best that I can and show as an example of how to do it.
Yeah. Tao Te Ching, right? It's specifically laid out. The best leader, no one knows they're the leader.
Mm-hmm.
People, we did it all by ourselves.
But one
leader is the one who does it for love. And that's why if you do something out of love, if you love the king and you want to do all the things because you love the king, when the king dies, you're going to leave the work because you never really love the work. You love the king, right? If you do it because you love yourself, I teach my students fundamentals. 7 Po, 3 Hun. Get your foundations. If you come to me, you're like, well, I've got calamity. Let's look at your foundations. I don't want to talk about that. And I know that's why we're talking about that. Because it's hard to laugh if you're exhausted. You're cranky.
Yeah.
It's hard to laugh if you're hungry. You're cranky. It's hard to laugh if you haven't had intimacy. It's hard to laugh if you resist being playful. And so if you're doing those things, people will not necessarily hear funny things, which people equate with laughter, but but the humor is just a way of looking at the world. It's a lightness about looking at the world.
Yeah.
I used to have this really great woman. She lived in Ochos Rios, Jamaica. It was amazing. Didn't go past third grade, but was an amazing, amazing midwife. Like an uncanny midwife. People would have babies, and the babies would have, colic or whatever. And I'll never forget this. Was she walked up, and I was there because I wanted to learn some healing things from her, and I heard that she was just amazing. So I went to see her. Wonderful woman. But we go there. She's like, baby, I'm crying. Come with me. So we go. And we get there, and she's talking with the mom and dad. She looks at the child, and she's like, who's been eating horseradish? I'm like, horseradish? And everybody's like, not. And the dad goes, and she's like, not good for the baby. And I was like, how did you know that? She's like, baby told me. I'm like, the baby what? She's like, and so we went out, and I was asking her questions, and of course I was a million questions a minute, and she goes, stop, let me get the laundry and they take in the wash. I'm like, why? Darn coming, not a cloud in the sky. I was like, I don't, are you a meteorologist now too? Not an hour and a half later, it was a storm. I was like, but she had such a light way. You would never think. She was not telling jokes. There was no Seinfeld to this.
Right.
But she has such a way. So I would say, like, I was like, so did you have like a mentor or some type of old master who taught me? She's like, no, life been teaching us all for our whole lives. Most people don't listen. I'm like, really? So when did you learn to start listening? It's like, probably I landed on my head. And but there was, there was times where babies would be like blue and everybody be freaking out. She'd be like, smack this child. And the child would start screaming, and then it would turn to normal. And she's like, and you'd be like, why was the baby not breathing? She's like, mama's scared all the time. Baby hold breath, learn it from the mama.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
She's like, that's okay. What you do? Grab her on her butt, make her jump. She breathe. I'm like, wow, it's great. But there's a lightness, there's a playfulness. You don't have to be silly. You don't have to be slapstick. Buster Keaton, but it's a quality or a state, right? When people talk about the world being a game, or your book, for example, it's an act. Yeah, it's all drama. All the world's a stage. I heard somebody write. But comedy and tragedy, you don't find them apart from each other. Everything.
Comedy is tragedy. Two things. Comedy is tragedy plus more tragedy plus more tragedy plus more tragedy, right? And then Woody Allen, has this in one of his movies talks about comedy is tragedy plus time.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Think about Othello. Horrible. And yet it's one of the funny, there's a lot of really funny parts in it. And usually the villain, the villain is usually the funniest goddamn person in the whole thing.
Right? So at the end of the day, would you rather face your death laughing, or would you rather face it in fear, right? I would rather laugh my ass off.
Yeah. Matter of fact,
that reminds me, Arthur, of a story I read in a book on Taoism, and it was talking about how like the Christians argue with the Muslims, argue with the Jews, whatever, and they're all like trying to like figure out, who's got the truth and the true God, and they're just fighting. He says, but meanwhile, the Taoist, takes his little bottle of wine or tea and his fishing pole, and it goes down to the lake and is writing poetry and, just enjoying the Tao so much that it doesn't even occur to him whether it exists or not, that he's just living it,
Yeah.
So in the vinegar tasters, right? Lao Tzu is smiling.
Yeah.
The vinegar is the same taste to everybody, but his perspective on it is to smile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Buddha's bitter because in Buddhism, what does he teach? All life is suffering.
Right. Setter of traps, right?
And then in Confucianism, it's sour.
Right.
It's there's an order. This goes against the order. And Lao Tzu's like,
Whatever.
everything I've ever tasted sweet is so much sweeter because I know what vinegar tastes like. Now,
everything is happening for me, not to me.
exactly. And the trick is really everything's not happening for you. It's just happening. But
Right.
take the attitude that it's happening for you, you have more reason to laugh.
Yeah.
And live longer. I mean, just biologically, you'll live longer because all the people who live over 100 years, you find that life kind of rolls off their back like a duck, water off a duck. It's just a way. Because laughter, it protects the nervous system. It protects the cerebral, spinal complexes with the peripheral, everything. It's really neuroprotective.
Yeah.
It helps digestion too.
Yes, exactly.
Better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's been about an hour. Shall we call it a day? Is there anything else anybody wants to add about laughter and the Tao?
Buddhists don't laugh enough, and when they do, they're not Buddhists.
you never stop. Just yeah.
The day that I can start a Buddhist holy war is the day that I have found, right? Mark Twain said the two best days of your life, the day you're born and the day you find out why.
Yeah.
Buddhist holy war. I swear on my life. That's my Ragnarok right there.
What would a Buddhist jihad look like?
Who cares as long as it happens? No. Full disclosure, I do love me some Buddhists, but they are Buddhists. What are they going to do? And if they get so affronted, they're like, you made fun of Buddha. You're not very Buddhist, are you? I just showed you your karma. Get back to the goddamn mala beads. If you need creative life tips on what to do with those mala beads, follow me on my other channel.
On that note, thank you for joining us. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.
Go outside. Go for a walk.
Go walk. Laugh.
And, guys, love you guys. Till
Bye.
next time. Ciao.